But the Eddie Jones story was where we wanted to begin, because it is on most of the pages, back pages this morning, and generally the tone of it is that Eddie has made a massive misstep here, is generally the tone, I think, of the reporting. It's fair enough to say. One of the pieces that we picked out, Eddie's Misery, and the Irish Daily Mail for you this morning, the writing of Chris Foy, who would be a very regular reporter on the Rugby Beat. England coach lands himself in race turmoil is the headline here. I guess there are two elements to it in terms of this story. The perceived racist slight by the reporter who had asked him a question. Effectively, it was about, she had said to him, do
we want to hear the audio?
We
may as well just play it and actually hear what actually happened.
And just as a slight sidebar, it's been very pertinent in the media this week. I don't know if you have been following the death of Caroline Flack. There's been a lot of talk about the power of social media and how we all need to be nicer to each other. Now, in particular, I was wondering, when it came to you looking after your England players and their mental health, what you are doing in that area to make sure they are well looked after and perhaps not so affected by everyone in this room.
That's a very interesting question. Obviously, read and listened to some stuff on the girl and feel sorry for her family, and thoughts are with the family. In terms of our players, we try to take a balanced approach. Obviously, social media is an important part of today's society. For some players, it's massively important. For other players, it's not important. So again, it's more of an individual way of looking after each player as well as we can.
Well, for you personally, you've talked before about your meditation. Are you still doing that, and how does it help you?
I don't think I've ever spoken about meditation. You must be thinking about someone else. Okay. Maybe another half Asian person.
I don't think so.
Maybe we all look the same.
Yeah, so you can hear the comments there from Eddie Jones at the press conference yesterday. And as I mentioned, there are two elements to it. There's a perceived slight from the reporter who felt that he was calling her out as being racist, and she sought an apology post that press conference, which was delivered, as I understand, in person from Eddie Jones. The RFU also releasing a press release yesterday to say that Eddie Jones doesn't stand over these comments. And then the second aspect of it, as to whether it's a racist remark or not, which is not for certainly me as a white Irish person to decide on that one way or the other. You have to listen to the audio yourself, I guess, and make up your own mind. It does feel, however, the coverage of it this morning, that there is an element of a pile-on. Eddie Jones is a very divisive character, and the coverage of him tends to be reflective of that he tends with great regularity to say things that are divisive. But as I said, it does feel as if the coverage of the story this morning is a bit of a pile-on, from particularly coming from the English media. And as I said, I have picked out this particular piece from Chris Foy. You heard the audio there yourself. The piece here begins that Eddie Jones found himself caught up in a fresh controversy yesterday after making a bizarre race-related outburst, writes Chris Foy. England's head coach was forced to apologise to a reporter for saying, "Maybe all half-Asian people look the same to you." Now, you've heard the audio there yourself, and actually words are very important in this context, and that is a misquote of what he said. I'm not saying that the same misquote is printed in all of the other newspapers, and what I can see, it seems to be reported accurately, although the pile-in is consistent. But this is just a misquote, and it's, for me, indicative of the attitude to stories like this. There's a nuance to it. Eddie Jones is speaking about his own ethnicity here, is the other thing, and that's why I feel utterly unqualified to make any comment on whether that element of it is offensive or not. I understand the reporter's desire to have everybody understand that her question was not coming from a racist place, and that he needed to come out and clarify that. But this stuff particularly, words are really important, and to misquote something so significant when it was a general point that they have now made very personal to her, which actually just didn't happen. They've included words that didn't exist. That's the danger with this stuff, and people frequently talk about the badness of social media and how things get churned up and misreported, and but here we are in print. It's not a good look.
No, I think it's fair to say that Eddie Jones was in maybe a strange mood in the press conference yesterday. That's probably an odd response to a question. Probably as far as you'd go, isn't it? It's, that's where it kind of begins and ends. Now, granted, I presume I'm in the vast majority of people here who are coming to this story with the full picture, that if we'd listened to this thing, at the time live on our televisions or whatever, and we probably would have walked away saying, well, that was kind of weird, and then gone about our day. And then to actually see, oh, there's been an apology or this thing's been taken further, probably would have raised eyebrows. Completely, however, accept your point that it is not our place to suggest what is or isn't offensive in this sort of situation. But certainly when I saw that this had become quite a big scenario, and that Eddie Jones was apologising for suggesting overtures of racism, I think that was rather odd. Very, very strange thing. And, you know, we'll probably hold our hands up and say that if there was a boot that needed to be stuck into Eddie Jones, us in the Irish media might be the first people to actually do so. But on this occasion, I'm not quite sure. I think you can say that he was in a strange mood and it was a strange thing to say. But to actually try and batter him and say that we needed an apology to be forthcoming, I'm not sure about that. Now, granted, I don't know the specific situation with the journalist or if there's been or what her story is. So maybe I'm completely missing the point here. Like,
yeah, well, I just think there's two. I think there's two separate ones. I think that as that played out, it's probably fair enough that at some point she doesn't want it existing in the ether that he was saying that she was racist.
True, I guess.
That's fair enough. I kind of understand that. And then there's a separate point about whether the comments were racist or not. And as I said, I don't feel particularly qualified to make a decision, a judgment on that.
You're making the point about the whole coverage around this being actually it is that is a very good point actually about the journalist, that you want to just clarify. Say, listen, Eddie, I didn't actually mean that whatsoever, and that's a private conversation, and that's totally fair, actually, when you put it that way. But I guess you're right, it's the situation of then, after all that's been kind of sorted and the dust has been settled, the whole sort of pointing fingers at Eddie, saying this is a huge racism row. And
a lot of white English people saying that, you know, this is, and Eddie Jones' ethnicity is that I think his dad is from Tasmania and his mum is from Japan. Like, that is his ethnicity, and he's quite qualified to speak about it, obviously. One of the other aspects of it was the reporting around it. Look, I don't know, maybe there's...
he was taking the piss out of himself.
Yeah. The meditation point, right? He said that he was asked about, a lot of the reporting on this point, specifically this morning about the meditation, is quite sneery. So she said to him, oh, you mentioned in Japan about your meditation. And so the coverage this morning is that, oh yeah, he did talk about his mindfulness when he was in Japan. So he spoke about mindfulness, not about meditation. And I think that was the root of his response. I didn't talk about meditation. He didn't go on to say, no, what I was talking about was mindfulness. But that was the distinction. And a lot of the commentary of it this morning is, oh no, but he did talk about this thing in Japan.
Yeah, he's obviously being pedantic, and I think people can be pedantic right back at him. I think that maybe Eddie Jones is sneering at himself as much as anybody else in this sort of situation. And I think that perhaps if we'd actually, again, if we'd seen this and it was actually happening right in front of us, and we walked away from that press conference, if we were in the room, we were like, well, that was weird, full stop, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where the story would have begun and ended for me.
Yeah, no, it's been a bit mad, and it's quite a nuanced conversation that people feel the need to rush in and make sort of what they would consider to be greatly informed views on it. So anyway, look, before we wander into uninformed hyperbole on our own.
Yeah, that is a danger.